Hi and welcome back to a new video. Today's video will be about CPUs, especially the 9800X 3D, and the fact that we will be offering Delidded CPUs with warranty from Thermal Grizzly's side. This has been a project we've been thinking on for a long time, and now it's time to start this as a pilot project with the 9800X 3D, especially because we have to charge quite a high price for this, and I want to explain everything very transparently to you, what we're planning, why we're planning to do so, why we're also only offering the AMD CPUs for obvious reasons, like there is no demand for Intel Arrow Lake. But yeah, that will be the topic for today's video. It might be that we also do this with Intel CPUs for the future. As I said before, with Arrow Lake, it's just not interesting enough. We will start with the 9800X 3D. This is also not an official AMD project. AMD has no clue what we're doing here. It's just a Thermal Grizzly project and also a small side project which we're doing together with Mindfactory. So we're just ordering the CPUs from a normal shop at the normal price from Mindfactory, and then we're basically doing our own thing. It might be that we do something with Intel in the future. It depends what they're bringing, how well the CPUs will perform. We did something similar in the past with Case King, where we not only offered Delidded CPUs but also pre-tested. This will be different because we will not pre-test them in sense of like overclocking capability. We will only test them if they're functioning properly after the delete. So that's something we will covering in today's video. I will show you all the process of what we're going through, how things are tested, and what the customer can expect. The way this works, because it's not an official AMD corporation, is we're buying the CPUs from the shop and we are doing all the deleting in-house, and we are currently estimating that it takes us about 30 to 45 minutes for the entire deleting process, cleaning, testing, verification. We will go through all this in a second. And that is like half of the price of what you pay. And the other additional half of what you pay in addition to a normal 9800X 3 is basically our own insurance, because we will give 2 years warranty on this CPU. But since this is a Thermal Grizzly project and not an AMD project, whenever a CPU dies and is returned from the customer, we will have to account for this. Like, we cannot forward this to AMD and get the money back. So at this point, we would always have a loss of about 550 euros, at least at the current price of the CPUs, and that's what we simply have to account for. And because I did this kind of project in the past with Case King, I know the rough estimate of number of failures that we have to account for, and that's simply how we get to about 120 euros in addition to what a CPU currently costs on the market. So again, if you're looking to get a 9800X 3D cheap and Delidded, do it yourself. That's what I personally recommend. But if you're maybe too afraid, or if you think that you might do something wrong and you're afraid of losing the entire CPU, I can totally understand this, because that's why a lot of people keep reaching out to us about this, and that's why we decided to do it, to offer it to those specific customers. And the benefit for you will be that you have the 2 years warranty. So whenever something fails, you don't have a loss of 550 euros, for example. You can just return the CPU to us and you will get a new one. Obviously, depending on the case, what was going wrong. Like, if you broke the CPU in half on purpose, we obviously can't refund it. But if it was just dying during normal use, normal operation, then it will be covered under our 2 years warranty. But now we will just go downstairs, check the deleting process, everything that's involved, cleaning, verification, testing, and everything that you get from us. For the deleting itself, we will take our normal deleders, then we have to unpack all the CPUs, put them in all of the deleders, and then we will not do the typical forward and back sliding motion because it would simply take too long. We're using this small oven, which we're currently using for tempering acrylic. So any acrylic that we're using in water blocks is tempered in here at 70 degrees Celsius for a couple of hours to remove stress from the acrylic. And we will just repurpose this oven, heat it up to about 170 degrees Celsius with all the CPUs inside. Then we will slide it once to one side. This will remove the glue and it will shift the IHS a little bit. Then in the second step, we have this small fixture right here, where we will put the CPUs inside with the IHS moved to the side. And this will allow for the second heating step, second heating process, putting it again inside the oven at about 160 degrees Celsius roughly. The IHS should fall down and the CPU would be deleted. We're doing this for 2 reasons. The first one is simply that the manual deleting with our delider, it's fine doing this at home for one CPU. But since it can take 20 to 100 times of moving this back and forth, it would simply take too much of our time and it would make the product even more expensive. So we're trying to make this as efficient as possible to keep the cost low, to keep the product as cheap as possible, which is still not in the end, but it's the only thing we can do, right? So this way, I think it's the most efficient and also the most reliable process, because we also have to account for a small quantity of potential failures in our process. There is always something that goes wrong, you know? It might be that the lidding is fine, but then somebody just randomly drops the CPU, for example, and it's dead. Something like this always happens. No matter how hard you try, in the end, something will always go wrong. So we have to account for that, and this method should be the safest and should keep things as simple and cheap as possible. After getting all the CPUs out of the box, they're just sitting inside the Delidded die mate, and it's the same procedure as what you do at home. So we have to add all the screws to all the Delidders and then put them into the oven. Finished all the assembly steps. Now putting all the Delidders in the oven. (170°C) has been reached for quite some time, and it also smells like CPU barbecue in here a little bit. We're taking the CPU out one by one. And that's after the first step. IHS was moved to the side a little bit. Now we have to repeat this a couple of times. Here you can see quite well how the IHS is shifted a little bit, and now they're placed inside the fixture for the second step. So now $10,000 worth of CPUs going to be melted. Half an hour passed. Yeah, I can see some IHSs laying on the bottom. Can maybe see it a little bit from the side. All the heat spreaders are below the CPUs, so it should be loose. And we will now let everything cool down. The CPUs and heat spreaders meanwhile cooled down, were separated, each in a tiny box. Now it's time to clean all the CPUs, so PCBs and also the indium from the chiplets. The CPUs are then being cleaned. As you can see, all the grooves being removed from the PCB, and also the chips, the dies themselves, are being polished, as you can see. Now the CPUs will be tested, and unfortunately after the first test, because we will obviously use liquid metal, the dies won't be as shiny anymore, because this is basically exposed silicon, and after the first application of gallium or gallium indium, you will see a stain of liquid metal afterwards. And I just want to be transparent and show how it will look like, because obviously we could polish off the gallium again, but for you, then it would just happen on the first application. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. So you can see some liquid metal residues. And again, we could polish this off again, but it wouldn't help you. Like after the first application, it would just look exactly the same again. Every single CPU is then tested on this setup, which is a B650E Aorus Master with a micro direct die CPU cooling block. And we're also testing at the same time 6000 C36 on the memory. I'm pretty sure that all the CPUs should be capable of handling 6000 megatransfers on the CPU when it comes to the memory frequency. We're still testing it nonetheless. And we are running Cinebench R23. The CPU is running stock, but we are checking what kind of temperatures you would typically see in the stock scenario running R23. The test result is then noted down on this test protocol, which is included in the CPU. And there we note the maximum CPU temperature between the Core 0 and Core 7, which in this case was 51 to 59. And that is included in the CPU. It will give you and us some kind of background information. For example, if you would mount the CPU and you would see, let's say, 80 degrees Celsius in R23 in the stock condition, then you would know something would be wrong in terms of, I don't know, contact, for example. So that's just a baseline to give you more information, what is expected. On the USB stick you can find two images. One is this one with a close-up of the CPU and a heat spreader to give you an impression of the condition once you receive the CPU. Also for us, later on if we would have an RMA case, then we could always check how did the CPU look like when we shipped it out. And also there is this QR code on top of the PCB, and that is exactly the number on the bottom that is written from it, basically the serial number on the PCB. And the second image would be a simple screenshot of what I just showed you. That is just to show the performance expected in the stock condition. Again, we're not testing any overclocking. We don't have the time to do that, but also again, the temperatures that we saw under load. Everything will come in this box. It will contain the original AMD packaging. It will contain the Delidded CPU, original heat spreader, and also the USB stick that contains all the information. Please keep all that in case of an RMA. And that leads me to that you might ask, what is covered under the warranty? Any normal overclocking damage is covered except for mechanical damage. So if you mount your CPU in a weird way and you crack the die, that would not be covered. The CPUs will now be available in the Thermal Grizzly store inside the EU and also inside Germany. It will be $699 if you're ordering from outside the EU, so that would be US, South America, Asia, whatever. You don't have to pay the VAT, which should give you a price of about 585 euros for the CPU. At this point, please let me know feedback in the comments, positive or negative. Also negative is very important for us to see if we can continue this project, if it's something that makes sense for you and for us. And yeah, we mainly did it because currently there is no other way to get a Delidded CPU with warranty for people who don't feel confident enough or do not want to risk the CPU to Delidded without warranty. Yeah. All right. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please let me know feedback. See you next time. Bye bye.